Hello, this is Russell from the Tate Geological Museum at Casper College, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite epoch of the Tertiary period, which is the Eocene Epic. And this is part of the age of mammals. So this is after the dinosaurs died out, but still long before there were any people. The Eocene is important partly because it's the longest epoch of the Tertiary by a pretty wide margin. I mean, we talk about the beginning of the Ice Age. The Ice Age started 2 million years ago. 2 million years is a pretty long time. The Eocene is 10 times longer than that. It's longer than the Margaret Thatcher administration. It just went on forever. And the other cool thing about the Eocene is that we know more about it than any other epoch in Wyoming history because more rocks of Eocene age are exposed at or near the surface of Wyoming than rocks of any other epoch, indeed of any period in Wyoming. So we've got a very good idea of what Wyoming was like, say, 50 million years ago during the height of the Eocene. So what sorts of rocks are we talking about? Well, let's start out with these guys. You might recognize this from our discussion of igneous rocks. It is an extrusive igneous rock. It formed at the surface as melted rock came out at the surface. What do we call that melted rock at the surface? That's right, lava. So there is a whole lot of this kind of rock, of rhyolite, in northwestern Wyoming, the Yellowstone area. And so what does that tell us? I mean, vast areas are underlain by a bedrock of rhyolite. Well, that tells us that there was a lot of volcanic activity in northwestern Wyoming. There would have been volcanoes dotting the landscape. The sky would have been black with volcanic ash. You would have been able to see rivers and lakes of hot lava. It would have looked a lot like Mordor from Lord of the Rings, except without that big floating eyeball thing. So that's northwestern Wyoming at the height of the Eocene. Now, in other parts of Wyoming, though, things would have looked rather different. If you dig around in the rocks of northeastern Wyoming, you find a very different sort of rock. You find this stuff. Now, once again, do you remember what this is called? This is coal. And does anybody know what sorts of depositional environments produce coal? Again, that's right. It is a swamp environment. So far from looking like Mordor, if you could visit northeastern Wyoming during the Eocene, you would see a landscape that would look a whole lot like modern-day Louisiana. There would have been bald cypress and swamps and ferns, and there even would have been crocodiles and large turtles and things like that. So that's the Powder River Basin back during the Eocene, just covered with swamps. And a lot of that coal is powering our current electrical industry in the world of today. Then we've got southwestern Wyoming. And down there, we find another kind of rock, yet another kind of rock. This is a layer of limestone. Now, does anybody remember what sort of depositional environment is indicated by the presence of limestone? You got it, an aquatic environment. Most limestones form at the bottom of the sea in a marine depositional environment. And this indeed was formed underwater. We've got the skeleton of a fish here to prove it. You remember this fish? Yep, state fossil of Wyoming, Nightia. But Nightia is a freshwater fish. And so the southwestern part of Wyoming seems to have been an enormous, gigantic freshwater lake, the Green River Formation, and 8 billion skeletons of this little herring-like fish. So here we've got the southwestern part of Wyoming covered with those lakes. So already we've built up a pretty good picture of what the landscape of Eocene Wyoming was like. The major mountain ranges of today already were in place, already growing, rising out of the ground during the Laramide orogeny, which continued into the Eocene. So you could have seen the Bighorn Mountains and the Casper Arch and the Laramie Mountains during the Eocene. And in between those mountain ranges, the sediments would have been washing into the basins and collecting there in the form of alluvial sands at the base of those mountains, later on to become sandstone, and then mudstones in between, indicating where floodplains and forests used to be. Now, people have found fossil plants in those mudstones, and that gives us a further indication of what Wyoming was like 50 million years ago. This is the leaf of a palm tree, a fan palm. It's an extinct species called Sabalites, but it's really not too different from a modern palmetto of the kind that you might find in modern day Florida. So in this picture here of Eocene Wyoming, we've got fan palms lending a very subtropical look to the landscape. Climbing fern and cardiospermum are also present there, also plants that today are found in more tropical climes. And then we've got weird ground-dwelling beasts that belong to orders that are extinct today. They have no close living relatives, and they left no descendants. Looking up into the trees of Eocene Wyoming might make you think for a minute that you were in Madagascar, because those branches would have been swarming with very early primitive primates, almost identical to modern lemurs.